Good evening, family. You've tuned into another broadcast of The Journey. And tonight, we've modified our program because of the momentous event of the passing of our dear brother Nelson Mandela. And both Charles and I thought that it would be important for us to attempt to both memorialize him and to hopefully inform some of our viewers as to the immense significance of this world leader. Just to introduce myself, I'm Dr. John Robertson, psychologist and co-host of The Journey. And now I'm going to pass the baton momentarily to my partner, Mr. Charles Morris. Mr. Morris, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I used to be your partner in crime, so.
Well, see, I think I upgraded a bit.
No, but see, it's some good crime, you know.
There you go.
You know, kind of like Robin Hood, you know.
All right. Like
but
that.
Anyway, happy to be here. Happy that you tuned into the journey. Hope that everyone had a very happy Thanksgiving, and you know, got through the Black Friday, the Cyber Monday,
Right.
and all of that comes part of this time of the season. But
And I was going to say in the Turkey Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right, and wanted to say that it's so funny because it always seems that at the end of the year, there always seems to be that one famous person. For some odd reason, it just seems like right before the end of the year, there's someone that we kind of grew up with, someone that we know seems to pass. And the more I think about him and the history itself, I mean, he lived for 95 years, but the impact, it's kind of like the impact of Sister Teresa, you know, around the world, because of the love and their belief in how generous and the difference that they've made, and for generations upon generations, and a name that will never be forgotten. So I'm very happy that we can pay tribute to him today.
Exactly. And along with Charles and myself, we have, as usual, a distinguished panel. And beside me to the right, and many of you know my good sister, Janet Bryant. And Janet is back with us again from Jamaica. And later on in the program, as we talk about Brother Mandela, many of her efforts are guided towards the same kind of social change. But I don't want to preempt her. She'll talk about this a bit more. And to my far right is Sister Gail Gardner. And again, many of you remember her from our earlier programs talking about domestic violence and abuse. But the other side, and one of the reasons we invited her tonight, is that she actually has traveled to South Africa and also been able to walk in the footsteps of Nelson Mandela in the Robben Island prison. So
I did not know that. Wow.
I just found that out today.
Oh, wow.
So we'll get a chance to share her experience, what it was like to be in South Africa and to be in that place that incarcerated our good brother for many years.
Yes.
Coming back, I think most of our viewers, or many of our viewers, will know about Nelson Mandela, but I just want to give you a little bit of background for some of our young people who may not know or realize just who this great man was. And I'm just going to read some of his biography, but I have to tell you already, his biography doesn't tell you a tenth of what this man has done and his impact on the whole world. One of the tributes as I was driving for the broadcast today, was being given by the head of the UN, and who indicated that the UN was going to make sure that they also memorialize Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
And as Charles mentioned, Mr. Mandela, President Mandela, His Excellency Mandela, and I love to say that because that gives him the station that he should be given. But the other thing I want to say is that with his extraordinary accomplishments, he was one of the humblest human beings from all of the things that I have read and I've seen about him. And Charles, I think your example of Mother Teresa is not inappropriate, because much of his accomplishments, though he accomplished much, that he also was, the humility that he exhibited was very similar to that of Mother Teresa.
Yeah. Can I?
Yes.
Can I tell you my story now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying it was probably the perfect time to share I was telling people don't know, but earlier I was telling them that I had a story to tell, and I was watching ESPN this morning, and because of the history of South Africa, as soon as you hear a person from South Africa, you kind of assume certain things, especially if they're an older person that we would consider in their, let's say, their 40s or 50s or 60s or something like that. And so you really don't know people. And so when ESPN called Gary Player this morning, he told his story. You can hear it in his voice.
Not to introduce, but some of our viewers may not know that Gary Player was a world class, and at one point, one of the top golfers, in the world.
Right, so. Right. So he's a top golfer, and so when he was talking to ESPN this morning, I got a total different perspective of him. He said that when Nelson Mandela got out of jail, prison, he was in some type of, I guess, place where he had a chance to meet him. And he said he came out, and he said it was very common for him to be walking around without shoes. He said that's very common. So when he said that he walked out, he went up to him, he bowed down, and he kissed his feet. And he said, I am so in awe of you and who you are and what you stand for. He said, because if somebody kept me in prison for all those years, I would be pissed. I would be upset. I would want to hurt somebody. But he said that you are such a gentle spirit. This is him talking to him. And that he said every time he was in the presence of him, he cried. He couldn't help but cry. That he had so much respect for him, and that he was just taken away just by being in his presence, and that he just didn't know of anybody else that he respected more, and that he looked up to. Yes. And so when he acknowledged the fact that he kissed this man's feet, he acknowledged that every time he was in his presence that he couldn't help but cry. You can tell that he was being real, and you knew that he understood. And so I guess there's only a few people in your lifetime that you will meet with that kind of spirit, because in reality it's kind of like a Jesus type spirit, forgiving, loving, having a peace of mind, kind of actually being comfortable where you are, in the sense that just because there's four walls there and there are only a certain amount of room in those four walls, you can be free because of his state of mind, and he understood he had a purpose.
Yes, exactly.
And he stood by that, and he believed that, and God rewarded him tremendously.
Absolutely.
So that was my story.
That beautiful story. One of the things I want to do, in just giving a little bit of background, is to just to scan some of the things that I think our viewers deserve to know about Brother Mandela. and that he was born in July 18th, 1918. When we think of that, that is almost a century away. And that he was born in a small province in South Africa. And that was part of what they called the Transkei at that time. And he rose from those humble beginnings from being what they called a cow herder, a cattle boy. Although he was from a royal family, at the time, but he also was someone who knew what it was to be in the pastures, in the fields, etc. Yes. And Mr. Mandela went from being a gentle cow herder to schooling. And in his schooling, he eventually, through his brilliance, earned a bachelor's degree at an all-black university in South Africa. He then went on to earn a law degree at an all-black university in South Africa. Yes. And his skills, he was being groomed to be what they call a privy counselor, a family counselor to the royal family in his tribal area. And when the influences that he gained in university became manifest, he reached out not only to his tribal group, but he also became friends with other individuals from other tribal groups, which was very much against the ethic. Exactly. He further in his political career, when he became involved with the ANC, the political party in South Africa, he reached out not only to other tribal Africans, but as we know, he reached out to many whites, to Jews that were part of the liberation movement, to the widest aspect that we can think of. He also was influenced by Gandhi. He was influenced by Martin Luther King, that many individuals may not know. Despite his being incarcerated, he followed the civil rights struggle in the United States very closely. And in one of his speeches afterwards, talked about his admiration of the civil rights leaders here in the United States and across the world. But Nelson Mandela was not always a Mother Teresa. And I think that in fairness to this great man, it doesn't take away from his greatness. He was both an athlete. He loved boxing. Right.
Yeah, we have a picture coming up showing that boxing.
Oh, okay. And he was also a track man. He loved running, and was always someone who felt that he had to be active. Also, in his youth, he, as you will see the pictures, also liked to be sharp. Okay, and you can see him as he was in his lawyer's role, and also in many public appearances, being as sharp as a tack, as we would say here.
Yes.
But he always had that spirit of being a servant, and that's one of the things that we can see. As we look at the photo, you can see him in his 90-some-odd years, as we look at those photos, still looking very elegant, sharp, and poised. Charles, as you're telling the story about him, there's a story that I found today that is a true one. And this is a story of Nelson Mandela. This is in his early days with the ANC. And the story is that they were on a plane trip with the ANC supporters. and they hit some violent turbulence. And many of the people on the plane were terrified. One of the engines in the plane actually stopped running. And several of the folks said, okay, this is it. However, when they looked up at the front, there was Nelson Mandela with his newspaper out, reading his newspaper as the plane is going through the gyrations, as the pilot is calling emergency landing instructions to the airport. And because we know he survived that, the plane was able to make an emergency landing, etc. So the storyteller said that, who was a reporter, turned to him and said, Mr. Mandela, when you were up there, you were reading the newspaper as cool as a cucumber. Did you know what, that we were in danger? Mr. Mandela said, you're right. I was scared as hell, but I wasn't going to show it. That was the kind of leader that he was, yes, who knew the importance of him keeping a cool head. Also, one of the stories that I heard on a PBS documentary on him some time ago is that in jail, where the task of the jailers were literally to break the spirit of those being jailed, that they tried everything in terms of isolating him, giving him almost semi-starvation diet, etc. And the power, the spirit of humility, the spirit of, I want to call it love, then the spirit of generosity had Nelson Mandela impressed the guards so much that they became, converted to his cause literally, as yes, they were having him incarcerated. Yes. That later on, and this is again a true story, at his inauguration, one of the same men who was his jailer, he had standing with him as he took the oath of presidency of this nation of South Africa. Wow. Now, the news broadcasts like to say, well, he was the first black president of South Africa. That's not true. He was the first president of a democratic South Africa. The first president, black, white, or otherwise. And I think that's important for us and our audience to realize. And his legacy is one in which he just was not the icon that served 27 years in prison and came out. And as Charles, as you said, I think I would be absolutely crazy, if anybody kept me anywhere. And literally, I also want to say, I just got on, I think it was on one of the TV programs, that he was kept for many years in a cell that was 8 feet by 8 feet.
That's it.
And I would say to our audience, measure off in wherever you are, 8 feet by 8 feet, and imagine living in that space for over, I think in that particular cell, he was in that cell for over 10 years by itself. And to again come out with his mind intact, with his spirit unbroken, had to be divine intervention.
I can say that I stood in that cell.
Okay,
and we had the hardest time trying to take a picture because you had to stand a particular way. You couldn't get the whole cell. And they showed a picture of President Obama standing at the window in that cell. That's about the best you could really do. You could get a picture over in the corner or something, but if you wanted a picture of the entire cell, there really wasn't any one place that you could actually get that because of the way it was shaped. It was shaped, regular way, but it was 8 by 8. It was not a place. And there's a no bed, blanket on the floor, and a can over there, and so you really don't have, with so many places, that you can do anything. I think I saw a chair, but it's just that space. There's no way to even to get a good photo if you wanted a photo of the panorama of the room.
But let me ask you, what was it that you mentioned? A little thing on the floor and a can. What was the can for?
I'm not sure, but I can only imagine.
To go to the bathroom.
You know, there's always, I think there's like cups and plates and things made out of, tins and stuff like that. So it would be something just barely for the basic.
I don't want to gross you out, but I had a friend of mine that served in the service, and he was captured, and he talked about they gave him a little bucket, and the bucket is what you also use to go to the bathroom, but you also eat out the same bucket.
Same bucket.
Yeah, out of the same bucket.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's part of it, but from what a friend of mine told me when he was captured, and he said you had a bucket.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. We'll have to pursue, what that was, because I think getting a true picture.
I think Dr.
of the
Morris can
devastation.
probably answer that better than I can.
Well, let's keep that and ask him. Okay.
But I can't see it being anything with something basic.
Exactly.
Pascal,
I'd like to, since you've been there in Robben Island, could you just share with us what it was like to be in South Africa and to go to that place and step in that cell?
From a youth growing up in New York, I always saw myself doing these types of things, going to Africa. And, they were very pro-black back then, and Afro and everything, and you were finding your roots. So as I grew to an adult and I moved here, I remember, always envisioning myself. I wore African-style clothes. I had never been to Africa. But I began to believe that I was going, and I went and applied for a passport. And when they asked me where was I going, I said Ghana.
Okay.
Because my people were mostly from West Africa, as I understood from history. I taught African American literature, and African American, history and literature go together.
Okay.
So I said I was going to Ghana. I haven't been to Ghana yet.
Okay.
And I was asked to go to Cape Town.
That should be on the bucket.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list.
Okay,
It's still there. That and the castle,
Okay.
But I was asked if, invited to go to Cape Town, and went 3 times. I believe it was 3 times, and just enjoyed it. So it was like going home. I can say that the most of us who are of African descent are from the West African Ivory Coast area, and maybe a little more into Kenya, but we don't go too far into the interior of the continent. But you would not find, and I believe Oprah Winfrey was very disappointed when she found out she was not South African. She's actually, it's like me, built like a Ghanaian, short and stocky, or big boned, So, but it was the fact that I got to that soil. And if I didn't do anything else but stay in the airport at Joburg and never got on the plane to go to Cape Town, I was there.
Yeah, okay.
And I have some friends who are returned today from South Africa. We have our church in New York the ministry itself has 26 churches in South Africa, but in North South Africa, up near Johannesburg, Durban, up there. And the one thing I told them, those who were going for the first time, that no matter where in South Africa you go, no matter where in Africa you go, I can't believe that it will not change your life, your perspective on where you are and the history that goes along with it, regardless of what part of Africa you came from. And the disconnect that we had for so long. And I believe it was back in the 60s when we started making the connection again. We talked about that, the names and everything. It's just that. So you have to, there's just no way you can go stand on that soil and not feel that something is different. Another thing is standing on Cape Hope. It's the very point of South Africa. And a Table Mountain, as you go up Table Mountain, there's a cable that takes you up there. And they said Robben Island's 4 miles out, and you could actually see Cable Mountain. They said that was one of Nelson Mandela's favorite views, that he could see Cable Mountain from his window. And or Table Mountain, excuse me. And but it has a cable that takes you up. But it's called Table Mountain. And if you stand there, on one side is the Atlantic Ocean, the other side is the Indian Ocean. And so it's really, I mean, just the awe of it. The mountains look like elephants, you know, gray, and just look like hairy elephants, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, not green like our mountains would be. And so I just know where you can go, and especially if you have that history in your life, that there's a connection there. You know, we're no longer disconnected.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to do, and is to ask my good friend Janet, because your work has been primarily in Jamaica. Do you see a connection with what you're doing and perhaps the influence of Nelson Mandela on your life or your work?
Well, Nelson Mandela spoke about the West Indian influence, Marcus Garvey, Castro. And because of his connection to Castro, he was placed on the terrorist list. He just came off the terrorist list in 2008. He was on the terrorist watch list by the Americans.
Even though he was a Nobel Prize Peace Prize winner.
Until 2008.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
Certain presidents would not endorse Nelson Mandela. Now, in Jamaica, there's some... In West Kingston, I can really speak about West Kingston more than anywhere else. There's some individuals that are like Nelson Mandela down there. And because of their influence in the community, they're placed on like a watch list by both the government, the police, and everybody else. You know, because of what they do, you know, how they react to things and everything around them. So, you know, it's finding your place and to know how to react to the crime and violence down there. Nelson Mandela didn't start as a passive person.
Absolutely, that's right.
He started out as a comrade. He started out based on the teachings of Karl Marx, Castro, and Che. You understand? And he was heavily influenced by the great Marcus Messiah Garvey, who is the most influential black person who has ever lived. Everyone else came after him based on his belief that blacks should bond together despite what is going on around them.
Okay. And with the background of Garvey and I've heard that influence, you know, in some of, and just to make sure, as you were talking about Mandela being a comrade, that when he became involved with the ANC, that the ANC, you know, was a strongly Marxist socialist political party. They believed that it was necessary for armed struggle, that there were two parts of the ANC, the military part and also the political part.
Right.
And so, as a result, the Mandela early on, as you said, was placed, you know, on the if you want to call it watch list, but as the most dangerous man. There were any number of attempts to capture him, etc. And there is a story, and this is one of the other small stories, but tells you a little bit about him. That in 1961, that he was being hunted by the South African police, and there was a white supporter. And by the way, one of the best places that they found to hide is among the whites, because they realized that the mentality of the typical South African.
Is that he wouldn't go amongst the whites.
Wouldn't go amongst the whites, and there wouldn't be any whites that would be
Be
crazy enough
to support
support
him.
it.
them,
Yes.
yeah.
But there were, and so he was in this safe house, and there was a tiny apartment. There was one bed, and so the white supporter of Mandela said, "Okay, well, I'll sleep on the floor, and you know, you've had a rough time. You sleep on the bed." And he said that they almost caught into an argument because because Mandela refused to sleep in the bed. He said, "This is your apartment. I am a guest, and so I will, sleep on the floor."
Sure.
And so the white supporter said, for him it was the most uncomfortable sleep, because he said that it was like the king was on the floor and the servant was on the bed. Okay, but that was Mandela. The other quick story I also want to tell is this is when he was a delegate, and this is after his release from incarceration. And he was traveling to a world conference, and so they were in this very posh hotel, with the best service, etc. And so the Mandela, the story is, always made his own bed. And so here it is in this posh, if you want, Hilton or one of those
them
hotels.
posh places,
Exactly.
5-star.
And he was about to make the bed, and his companion, who was a world traveler, said, "Oh no, you can't do that. You're going to insult the hotel staff, who take pride in making the bed." So Mr. Mandela said, "Could you please call the staff?" And the guest said, "Okay." And he called the staff. And he said to the staff, he said, "I'm not insulting or disrespecting you, but from a boy, I've always made my bed.
Yes.
So can you allow me to make my bed?" And so the story is that the staff felt that he had given them the privilege of carrying on one of his traditions of making his own bed.
So
Okay,
good.
and again, Nelson Mandela. So this tells you, this man who 27 years in this, incarceration, and also aside from being in the cell, they were out from sun up to sundown, breaking these particularly hard rocks. No sunglasses, no
covering.
shade, no nothing. Being out there in the blazing sun, and after that 27 years, being able to put together a peace and reconciliation committee. To my knowledge, and I don't have all of the information in this, I don't know anyone prior to Mandela's having done that
Before,
who has put together such. Now there's some folks that have tried to imitate him afterwards, but no one before who has thought of or carried off successfully a peace and reconciliation committee. And all he said to these individuals who had murdered people, who had devastated communities, etc., he said, "All I want you to do is to tell the truth."
Yes.
Isn't that extraordinary?
That is so.
Okay.
And so I had before we move on, I had heard that he learned to speak Afrikaans. And
Yes.
that he was Zulu, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And Zulu and Xhosa, that's how you say it,
Yes.
are the two major, but there's a lot of languages, and of English, and Afrikaans. And he learned to speak Afrikaans and was able to give some important, speeches in that language. And one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard is the national anthem, and it's sung in different parts of it. It's sung in the different languages that they speak. So I'm very impressed with that. And the way he used that, he said, learning a man's language, you really get his attention. Basically, what he said, paraphrased.
Okay. Yeah. And from my information here, that he was Xhosa.
Yeah, Xhosa.
Okay.
He was Xhosa.
And I
Okay.
cannot click. So.
I get Xhosa. Xhosa.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought he was Zulu. But with that language, I remember hearing it as a kid. Miriam Makeba sings a song, the click, the click song,
exactly.
the click song. That's what, that clicking. I learned that as a kid, but I didn't know it was attached to a language until I went to South Africa.
Absolutely. Okay. One of the things that we're going to do, we have someone, a Dr. Cliff Morris, who is someone who has traveled to South Africa and who also had some incredible memories of the influence of Nelson Mandela on his life and the life of many individuals who were there. So we're going to connect to Dr. Morris by phone, and hopefully if this works, we should be able to hear him on speakerphone.
Okay.
Good. Hi, Dr. Morris.
Dr. Johnson?
Okay. Well, it's Robertson, but as they say, just as long as you don't call me any four-letter words.
Okay, I think we can manage that.
Okay. Okay. I'm here, Dr. Morris, with Charles Morris, who is our co-host, and with Sister Gail Gardner, who you know very, very well, and with a very good friend of mine, Miss Janet Bryant, who is doing some tremendous work in Jamaica. Yeah, as we were talking about the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela, we were talking about what it was like to have been in the footsteps of Mr. Mandela. And I just would like you to share with our audience what your experience was in encountering the life, of this world-shaking man. So go ahead.
Well, my first encounter, I guess, with the South African continent and culture, or the country and continent and culture, was in 2000, when I was invited by People to People International, now run by the granddaughter of the late President Dwight Eisenhower. That organization recruited and sent 38 math teachers from the States, and I imagine my name was among the rolls of AMATIC and some other math organizations, national math organizations, but I raised the money and then subsequently went to South Africa to tour. So we were in Cape Town about 4 days, went from there about 2 or 3 days to Johannesburg and Pretoria area, and we, in the course of that week that we were there, 10 days, week to 10 days that we toured South Africa, we met with high-level people in the government, education, but we went to the township schools and had a chance to connect with teachers there. I say that because that is what led to me going back, and I've been back every year since then except 2001, to teach mathematics there. But while we were there, I had a chance to go to Robben Island, to the prison, to actually walk into the cell where Nelson Mandela was being held, to look at the graves of the 1,600 lepers, Robert Sobukwe's house we saw there on Robben Island. And generally that's a place where I guess they send you when they were ashamed of you. But at any rate, we met several people in the course of the time that I've been going there that spoke of him very reverently. Of course, the change that he brought immediately to that country was the catalyst that allowed myself and others to go and to give back. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do what we are doing inside South Africa. There would not be the reign of freedom of movement to go to several places and so forth to bring humanitarian aid and efforts there. So we were very privileged to be able to bask, you might say, or to move around in that country, make the kind of deposits of humanitarian aid there in that place to feed the hungry and to deal with, people on the streets, and in fact in the schools there. So he had a huge influence on not only people around, but my own personal journey, my own personal movements there, and being able to take others there.
Okay. Very good. And we were talking a little bit earlier about Robin Allen and what it was to both be there, walk in his footsteps, and also what it might have taken to survive that. And could you talk about that a little bit?
For the survival of Mandela, you mean?
Yes.
During apartheid?
Exactly.
Yeah. As much as the most we learned was there was a gentleman who was in prison with him, who's now, I don't know if he's still doing it, but he works with the prison system in giving tours. His name was Lionel. He said, when you think of Lion, think of Lionel. And Lionel was a spellbinding storyteller. He talked the work in the quarry. He talked to Mandela and him marshaling, in a sense, the troops. He was a teacher. He was a lawyer by profession, but he taught the men who were there in prison how to read. And so when they're at the quarry, he actually turned that into a kind of a school where he would teach the guys to read, to write, to do several things. And whenever a young guy would come there to prison for the first time, this is now 4 miles away from the coast, or 11 kilometers, however you want to look at that, he would send fruit back to them as a gift to welcome them to the prison. And so I saw him as a person who began to build his base of support and the strong leadership skills actually crafted there while he was in prison and at the quarry where they worked every day. And it's just something to hear the guys who speak about him, and again, reverent, speak in very, very appreciative tones and language, and they talk about him, and they tell the story, story after story. They told us about him and the blessing that he was to several men, and of course, the guy who was telling us the story. And they just went on and on and on, and so it gave you, this sense that these guys were in the presence of a very important guy who didn't give as much thought about his own life. He lived for others, and they felt the strength of that. They felt the power of that. The love that was there, and his outreach to so many, his own family, and of course the millions of people around the world who. I heard about him from a friend of mine who was a history major, and he wore a cap at his graduation, Free Mandela. That's my first time hearing about Mandela, long before I even made the trip over there. But yeah, just a powerful and an engaging and strong personality for good.
Okay. If there is one message that, both in terms of your trip and as you think about President Mandela's life, if you were to say what the major message you feel that his life and legacy was about, what would you say that was?
Well, his life and legacy had to do with freeing people from oppressive governments, oppressive situations, and he was about forgiveness. And he saw that forgiveness, and I was saying to someone just tonight, we have a pastor's dinner that we have the first Friday night of December every year. We have all the pastors come in. And I was saying to them, if he was able to forgive, and the millions of people knew what he had gone through, knew that 27 years his life being deprived as much as it was deprived. But God knew through that how to shape the heart of a president. The president that they needed. And he was not educated, he was not fashioned to be a president by the University of Stellenbosch, nor by the University of Cape Town, University of Western Cape, and any of the institutions that were there. Here he was fashioned by God's own hand in prison. His heart, the heart of a leader was formed, and you heard me speak about Joseph and how Joseph was formed in a similar fashion. And as I preached and ministered there, I have drawn the parallel between Joseph, who was in jail and had to somewhat give thanks to Potiphar's wife for doing what she did. She meant it evil, but God meant it for his good, because his point of elevation never came from the University of Egypt. It never came from the prestigious institutions. He went to jail. His point of elevation was going to come from a place that she was able to put him there.
Yes.
And so now Mandela, now in the 20th century, we see a reenactment of Joseph again. And Nelson Mandela, how he ascends from the prison. After 27 years of his life, he ascends not to the vice pharaoh, but to the pharaoh. He becomes the actual president of the country, and immediately has the hearts of millions of people worldwide who prayed for him, and of course are affected by him even after his death.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate the thoughts that you have given. I feel like I've gone to church for a little bit there, and that is a good thing. Okay. Listen, I was almost wanted to say amen, after you finish. In fact, we are here saying amen. That's it. So I thank you for your input, and I know that you've taken the time away from dinner with the pastors, but please tell them from us, from Sister Gail, from Janet Bryant, from myself, and from Charles Morris, we thank them for loaning you to us for the time being, and the message that you have given us. It truly was a vital and a spiritual message, and we thank you for your time.
The journey continues.
Well, thanks. It's my pleasure, my honor to be able to speak about him. He was a wonderful, what a bright light, and what a legacy he left for this world. I mean, we are all humbled by his being here, and just his sensitivity throughout this entire thing. But anyway, thanks to you all.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night and a happy and holy holiday.
Okay, thanks.
Merry Christmas.
And a Merry Christmas, Charles said.
Merry Christmas. That's right. Merry Christmas.
Okay. Very good. Okay. One of the things, and there's so much that we can say, about President Mandela, that I didn't realize that our time is actually running fairly short. So if I can, what I'd like to do, if I can for a minute, is to segue, because I think if there's something that I've gained from both listening to and learning about President Mandela's life, it's not about the speeches. It's not about the kind of presentation, but it's about the work. And if there's anything that President Mandela taught us, it is about continuing the work, no matter what the conditions. And that example of his being able to put together a movement while incarcerated is one that I believe that despite our circumstances, that we may say, well, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough this, that, etc., but to be able to continue the work no matter what is critical. And what I'd like to do is to have Sister Janet talk to us a little bit about, as she said, that there are many Mandelas in West Kingston.
Yes, they are.
And I'd like to have her raise them up and raise that issue up, because, again, we can't all do large world-shaping things, but an individual can make a difference. And I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about the difference that you're trying to make.
Well, it's not only me, but there are other people down there. And there's some forgotten people in Jamaica in general, and West Kingston in particular. I'm going to big up the men, the fathers, real fathers in West Kingston who are making a difference in their children's lives. You know, those who don't go to party because they have to stay home and take care of the children, those who go to PTAs, those who do things of that nature, who are really, really impressed with their child coming home with an A, when the A probably don't mean nothing to anybody else. And, you know, I'm not gonna call names, but these men don't know I've been watching them. I've been watching some men, and I mean, trust me, these are not innocent people, but where their children are concerned, that's all they care about. And I, for myself, I've been working with the students at Joseph Royal Educational Center in Annatown for the past almost 3 years. And oh my God, I miss them so much because...
Well, you can give them a shout out.
Yeah, big up Joseph Royal. And big up my brethren them on the ends. You understand? Baby father, my brother, and my grandson, and everybody else. And you know, everybody who knows them is supposed to big them up. I big them up, real Jamaican. All right?
All right.
And like I said, we've been working with these people, taking them to church. The men want to go to church. They want to go to church, and the students are doing awesome. And like I said, just pick up people and down there. So.
Okay. One of the things I know that we talked about was the attempt to get desks, equipment, you know, for the school children. And I know that you and I talked, and you were able to, with your convincing ways, be able to get a pastor to commit
Bishop
to
Black.
yes, okay. And Bishop Black, we might as well give him a shout out
Bishop
too.
Black.
All right. And but we still have a problem because in trying to get the desks to the children, you know, in the school.
Well, we have secured a container of equipment, school supplies, desks, whatever, computers, everything that is necessary for the running of the school. We have secured that. Bishop Black has secured that. But we actually need $3,500, call it $4,000, because deflation, whichever one of deflation, is causing the dollar to slide, you know, and it's costing about that to get the equipment to the container to Jamaica. You understand?
Right.
At present, you know, if people out there listening, the people out there that are listening can call the Multicultural Addiction Network. Dr. Robertson is in charge. Give him the money, he's honest. He's not going to rob the money.
No,
Give Dr. Robertson.
The money is not going to me, okay?
Take a tour around.
Multicultural Addictions is a nonprofit that's around community education and mobilization.
Yes.
So my sister likes to make it plain, you know, but we're trying to figure a way if people want to contribute, how to contribute. And I would tell our audience out there, if you want to contribute, that I'm going to give you a phone number, and we'll also put it on our website afterwards, so that if you don't have a pen or pencil handy, but we're located here in Orlando, Florida, and you can call this number. It's area code 407-297-1185. Again, it's 407-297-1185. If you call tonight, and you'll get a recording, we will get back to you. Also, if you want to any additional information, call the same number. We will get you to Sister Brian if you want to get more specifics about the school and the project. The one other thing I wanted Janet to talk about, and I felt particularly good about, is that the school and being able to get the rating that it did, despite having almost no equipment.
Well, it's not hard. You just have to dedicate yourself to knowing that anyone, my belief is a child that was born is able to learn. The one in the hand, if you teach them, they'll learn. So labels are not attached to anyone around me. You understand? I keep school at the bar. Yeah, they call Miss, help me with my maths. I have a seat right here. Next thing you know, we're having school at the bar. Okay. Anyone can learn. You would just need people to assist somebody else along the road. You understand? Jesus said that. Go to the highways and byways and teach. You understand? Okay. He wasn't talking about collecting nobody's money. He said teach them about humanity. Teach them humility. And our school, despite what we don't have, has gotten a B+ rating from the government.
Well, that's
they don't understand how we have done it. We have no calculators. We barely have blackboard. The blackboard is on building blocks. You understand? The chalk, we use even sidewalk chalk, anything we can't rewrite with.
Right.
But we have nothing. Our school has nothing. My textbook talks about GCT, government consumption tax. And it was talking about 8%. I don't even know when it was 8%. It's 17.5% right now, GCT. And the textbook I'm teaching from is talking about 8.7%. We have nothing, but we have love.
I'd like to say one of the things about our people, and that is the entire diaspora, from Africa to Jamaica to here. We know how to make something out of nothing.
Tonya and make fashion. That's what them say. Tonya and make fashion.
There you go.
Use what you have. If you have to count stones, go count some stones. Bring the peas grain to school. Eat less. Go on a diet. Bring some of the peas to the school.
There you go.
So children can count.
But we need those funds to get those desks to those students, because if those students can achieve a B+ rating without adequate desks or equipment, think of what they could do with the equipment. We may be looking at a future doctor, a future lawyer, a future teacher, etc., with your help. So I would ask you during this holiday season of giving, if you would like, I'm going to give you the phone number again, give a call to 407-297-1185. And I'd like to close out, because I don't think that it is inappropriate while we are memorializing Nelson Mandela to talk about the current issues and problems that we have. So I'd like our panel to give their last thoughts as we close out our program on what the message that you would like to give that relates to Nelson Mandela's life. So, Sister Gardner?
I see his life as one that emulates that of Christ. I do. I'm sure he had feet of clay like the rest of us walking this earth, that he made mistakes, and he admitted to mistakes that he has made. But he always understood, I believe, who he was. Without all the titles, without all the other things, he understood. And that's the one thing, is when we begin to transfer ownership, you know, that you're God and I'm not. Bottom line.
All right.
And you know,
since we're running out of time, Sister Brian?
I'm rushing him. So about like 20 seconds.
Yes. Well, Nelson Mandela started off by not turning the next cheek. You understand? Somebody slapped him, he slapped back. And my belief is that turning the next cheek at all times didn't work. So that's what I got from him in the beginning. And then he turned to be a calm and quiet person. And that's what most people know about him.
Okay. Well, and I have to say that one of the things that he did is to continue his growth. that it's right that he was a revolutionary in many ways. He was a revolutionary as a fighter, you know, with the AFC. He was a revolutionary after prison as a reconciliator. And with that, Charles, I don't know if you want to have the last word as we close out.
No, I'm just gonna let you close it out.
Okay.
Just want to say happy holidays to everyone. Have a Merry Christmas and well, we'll be back.
We'll be back. Yeah, exactly.
But enjoy the holidays.
Okay. And just in closing out, we want to say again, the journey continues, and the journey is from me to you, and from me to you. Good night. Join us next week.
Good night.
Good night.